Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzar, happy to be your host today, joined by Vern Schellinger and Alki Thompson. And we had a little bit of a Zoom glitch this morning. So we're only going to have a 30-minute meeting because we started a whole lot late because we all had issues with the Zoom. So anyway, but we do have Rebecca and Maria joining us today. And ladies, you've got the floor here. If you have job search questions that we can answer for you, we are ready to rock. So Rebecca, looks like you're ready to lean in. So go ahead. What can we do for you?
Great. Thank you so much. This is such a great opportunity to be able to ask these questions. Come up all the time. One question it is kind of specific, but I'm sure it comes up. I recently applied for a job through a recruiter. So the job posting was on the recruiter website. I applied, but it doesn't tell you what the company is, doesn't name the company.
Right.
And so that whole piece of like researching the company and seeing if you have connections.
Right. You can't do it. Right.
Yeah. Is there anything I can do about that?
No, first I'll just share, and then Lauki definitely will want to chime in on this one. First of all, let me tell you the why, and you may know, but for someone who's watching this may not know. The reason why that happens is because that recruiter is doing what we call a contingent search. Okay. So in the world of recruiting, there's contingent and retained. So contingent means that the recruiter is not getting paid for the placement until they make the placement. The retain means that the employer is paying the recruiter along the way, typically a third of the anticipated fee. And it's an exclusive search, the recruiter and the employer in it together. There's no competition. In other words, there's just one recruiter working on that search. But for the contingent, there's typically multiple recruiters. So the employer is sort of hedging their bets and they're going out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whoever, not typically more than that, but a bunch of recruiters say, hey guys, go find the people. We'll pay whoever lands the pay. Well, the reason why they keep it confidential is because they don't want the recruiter doesn't want their competitors knowing who the employer is so that they can go and be competitors, right? They're trying to keep it close to and on top of that, they don't want the candidates going directly to the employer, because if that happens, they may lose the fee as well. So they're trying to keep it all close to the vest. As in the retain world, we share it. I only do retain these days. In the retain world, because there is, even if one of my candidates went to the employer, their employer would push them back to me because I'm handling the whole search, right? So that's the reason. And so what to do about it, there isn't much to do about it. I mean, you can maybe surmise, maybe you can figure it out, but typically they sanitize it enough where you just can't. And so really it's just a matter of look, if the recruiter reached out to you, that means they're interested in your background. So that means you just want to be prepping yourself for that interview based upon the job announcement, making sure you comb through that document and you are aligning every which way you can. Skill, industry, soft skills, hard skills, particularly hard skills, demonstrating to them that you really are a standout candidate because you are one of a lot of candidates that they're vetting. You've got to be able to set yourself apart. So you've got to read that job description thoroughly, line it up with your background as much as you can. So that's my high level. So Alki, anything you want to add?
You covered most of it. Yeah, you're probably not going to find out much other than the job description until they decide to give you a call. And even then, depending on how that call goes, or to her point, if I'm looking at 3 other candidates, and if there's any doubt at all in our conversation, I still may not reveal it yet. A lot of times, we will just check the basics, which kind of sucks, but we'll just check the basics to see if things are matching up, and then we'll be like, all right, I'll get back to you, because what I'm doing in the meantime is sharing you with them, just to say before anybody gets too excited and set up the date. We just want to make sure, hey, you told me to go find this kind of person. I found this kind of person. What do you think? And if they're like, yeah, I'd like to talk to her, then they're going to call you back and go, okay, here's what we're working with. And then you can ask their questions. But yeah, on the front side, a lot of times you may not even find, even in that first screen with them, you may not even find out who the employer is. You could ask, well, hey, what industry? I mean, I would ask, hey, who is it? And if they say, well, I can't reveal that.
Can't tell you.
You could at least say, well, can you tell me what industry, yada, yada, and
Anything.
they still may not, but you can ask.
Yeah,
Great.
it's a little complicated on the backside of it, which is why they can't reveal it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
It's
And,
it
and
makes it a
if
little
they
harder,
do,
but
if they do tell you the industry, then at least you can go out and start to read stuff, what's going
On
on in
the
the
industry.
industry, so, that can potentially help you if you can get to the point of the interview.
Mhm.
I would say not to push too hard because it's an initial, but if if you're curious, Kathy, you could, ask, hey, what industry? Okay, you won't tell me that. What size company? Without being too pushy. But there's, especially if they say, well, do you have any questions for me? Well, you can ask questions and it's either yes or no. So
You might even just want to say, I've realized that this is that you're not unable to reveal the employer. Is there anything you can ask the recruiter? Is there anything you can tell me
Mhm.
about the employer, about anything about them, anything
culture.
about the role, culture, anything, right?
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
because they might, even if they can't reveal the name, they might be able to reveal things about the job and the culture because that's generic. That way you wouldn't figure that out.
Mhm.
So just that's a good point. Now you just ask questions to them, see what they can tell you.
And they're not going to do the disclaimer. It's funny, we were having a conversation before you guys popped on, but would be a nice world if they said, okay, here's the deal. I'm a contingency recruiter doing a retention search. That means I can't tell you, and I'm not going to tell you, boom, 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 but here's what we're going to discuss. Yeah, they're not going to do that. They're just going to jump on and start asking you a few questions, see if
Right.
you qualify and make you feel a little
Yeah.
weird, like, okay, I just got picked, prodded and probed, and I didn't get a chance to, prod
Right.
and probe myself.
Right. That's right. Because look, the recruiters aren't going to tell you the back end of their business model. It's actually a little uncouth to do that anyway. Why would we why would we
Yeah.
share that, right? And why would you even think to know that? It's just, talking about money, and it just doesn't make any sense. Whereas you're just there to get a job. And so, people just do the best that they can, now sometimes not again, this might be TMI for you, but sometimes the recruiter it'll be a contingent search, but it'll be what we call exclusive.
Mhm.
If it's exclusive, they might actually reveal it because at least they know that they're going to get the placement, or hopefully
Mhm.
they're going to do it. But if it's contingent and not exclusive, and they've got competition with multiple agencies, that's where they get, hey, that we can't share.
Right.
Only when things get serious, like, hey, they absolutely love your background. So now let's have a
Right.
real conversation.
All
So
right. All right.
the
Right. And
beginning,
and then once the recruiter has already shared the name of the candidate with the employer, then they're sort of locked in. Then if you get placed, the employer knows that Alki is the one to have presented you, not another recruiter. That's part of what the issue is, Rebecca, is that if there's multiple agencies, you, Rebecca, could be interviewing with all those agencies.
That's true. Yeah.
Whoever is the first one, I'm sorry to get technical with you. It's what we call in the recruiting, the procuring source of the hire. That sounds funny, but the procuring source of the hire is who procured the candidate. Like who
Mhm.
was the one for the first person to share your name,
Who
right? To
gets the credit?
let them know about you.
Yeah.
If they hire you, that recruiter gets the credit.
Mhm. Okay. Wow. All right. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's inside baseball that most people would never know.
Right.
that's a whole seminar by itself. Just, hey, candidates and job seekers, when you get a call from a recruiter, here's what's going on.
Right.
But everybody else, I got a call from a recruiter. I've been waiting for 5 months and somebody actually called me and they're interested. Let's talk. And then you get them on the phone and you're like, what? 3 minutes? That's all you asked me like 2 questions. What is this?
Yeah. I know the feeling.
There's a lot of ways that a lot of methods that employers use to find candidates. Recruiters are one, and even in the recruiting world, there's all these different ways that it happens. So of
Mhm.
course, why would you know that? Like, there's no reason why a candidate would know any of that stuff. You're just like, I want the job. How do I just get me through the hoops and loops? And
Yeah. Yeah, I I was a little naive first starting out looking at LinkedIn and it tells you how many people have applied. And when it's a low number, you think, oh, not that many people are applying, but and
Yeah.
before too long, I realized that's the only place that
The job is
those
posted.
numbers come
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebecca, what's your background? What,
I have, I worked for 25 years at a legal publisher. Um, uh, so publishing, which these days they call content creation or content management or something else, technology. So I have to kind of use all those words, but yeah, and so various areas of law. Um, so you know, editing, writing, also management. I was a manager for the last 5 years.
yeah. And again, the reason I'm asking is the more we know about you and who you are, the greater likelihood maybe we can help you in some way. And so,
Yeah.
So
I'm looking to possibly shift somewhat away from that. This job, for example, that I applied for is an executive assistant job, which, you know, it's admin, but it seems, you know, based on the job description that it's just, you know, it's very important admin, if that makes sense. You know, really kind of keeping everything together for other people, organizing their schedules and everything else that they're doing, getting their documentation and you know, protecting, keeping stuff confidential, all that
So
sort of thing.
have you been vetted by, has the recruiter called you yet, or you just applied and you were curious to figure out the
I
company?
applied, and I was actually at an event that recruiter put on yesterday, and I did talk to one of those folks and mentioned, you know, that I had applied and she was going to.
Okay, so something to, so I'm glad you just mentioned, thank you, Vern, for asking Rebecca about her background, because this is another point I think that we should talk about here.
Mhm.
And that has to do with positioning yourself for a career pivot, because that's actually what you're talking about here. And I don't know whether you're exclusively looking for EA jobs, but this job is an EA, and that's not your background.
Right.
So I'm going to use a phrase I use all the time on this call, a little bit of a broken record, and that is employers are risk averse. You
Yes.
got to walk a mile in the employer's shoes whenever you think about any sort of, well, your job search in general, but especially if you're going to do a career pivot. So I want you to think about this, for Rebecca, for a moment. All right. Okay. You're the employer.
Mhm.
You have an executive assistant opening, and it's you. You are the CEO, right? You're looking for an executive assistant. What kind of background do you think that you're going to be looking for when you're trying to hire an executive assistant?
Someone who's done that job before.
You got it. That's exactly right. I could stop right here. Like that's enough of a thing to just share with you. Okay. But I'll go on. If you understand that going in, your job is to minimize their risk and to somehow overcome it. And so the way to do that is to highlight the skills that you do have that are relevant to that role. Fine, you haven't been an executive assistant, you haven't had that title, but you want to craft a resume that is administratively oriented. In fact, I'm going to give you a story it's ironic that I'm sharing. I've shared this story 1,000 times, but it's funny I'm sharing it with you given where you are. So I helped, I'm a career coach and a recruiter. So I helped in my career coaching, I helped this person many years ago who was an attorney, and he wanted to become, funny enough, a writer. Okay. This is just, the end of the story is going to make you laugh because of what you do. So he was an attorney, he wanted to become a writer. And I was like, how do you write? So I went through his background and we found all of his writing skills, right? Writing accomplishments, recrafted the resume with writing. Couldn't change his title, of course, but we could highlight all the writing skills. Then we created a LinkedIn profile that talked about why he likes to write, what kind of writing, blah, 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 blah. Ready to laugh? He got a job as a journalist with a legal trade publication. Funny, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When you started talking, I'm like, oh, this is so funny. It's related to my story. But you're the opposite, right? You want to go from that legal publication to admin. And it's the same thing. You would have to have a resume that pulls out your administrative skills, presuming, Rebecca, that you have them. If you have ever done anything like that, maybe you haven't been exactly an EA, but if you've done admin work, That is what needs to get highlighted, not your writing skills. Not that you can't mention any writing, because writing is important in admin, but
Sure.
there's a difference between writing and being a writer, right? So it's what I call ing versus The writing skills in an EA is just a skill. It's not being a writer. You've been a writer, an editor, right? And so you're gonna have to de-emphasize the, if you will, the side of your world and emphasize the ings, okay? So you gotta look at your administrative skills. That's what needs to come out. Even retitling your resume, you know, aspiring executive assistant, you could even say. And then everything else in your resume looks to that. That's a way to minimize the risk. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to work, because that employer may just flat out be focused on somebody who's an EA. And I will tell you too, just having placed a lot of EAs in my life, that's a very specialized skill set. Not that you're not capable. I'm sure you're perfectly capable, but understand that there's a certain, especially for people looking for seasoned EAs, there's a certain nuance, there's a certain experience set that EAs have that non-EAs don't, right? In terms of understanding how to juggle that person's schedule and all anticipating their needs and all the different nuances of what an executive's life looks like and how an EA can support them. They just sort of know, right? You know what it is when you have experience in something. You've got 25 years in, right, legal publishing. You understand, you know stuff now that you didn't know 25 years ago, and there's something to be said for experience. So employers often feel that way about EAs. So know that this is a lift. This is not a light thing like, oh, I can do this. It's walk a mile in their shoes. How are they looking at your background to say, is this Rebecca going to have a big learning curve or a small learning curve? They want the small learning curve. So you've got to assuage their concerns by at least showcasing all the skills that you have that are directly related to that work. Now, if you aren't, and now here's the next layer on top of that. Now you're dealing with a recruiter situation, and that's what makes it even trickier. Recruiters are hired to find the purple squirrel and the unicorn, okay? It's why employers go to recruiters. Find the person that we can't find on our own. So all the more if they're looking, if the employers ask the recruiter, go find me executive assistant, who's the recruiter looking for? Executive assistants, and not just executive assistants, but people who really, really like certain kind of executive assistant, maybe certain kind of industry, certain size company, blah, blah, blah. So the recruiter now has this extra layer of unicornness that they're being asked to do, and they're getting paid a fee to find that talent, that person. Does that make sense? So just understand, if you do go this route, you really have to make the case strongly. But I'll say one more thing, and that is networking. So putting this job aside, if you really do want to go after that kind of job, it's going to be that much more important for you to network and find the hidden job. Because honestly, when an employer is using their behind the scenes network, not a recruiter, they're not posting a job on the job board, it's totally hidden. Oftentimes they're looking for a person, right? They're like, hey, network, who do you know that would be a great fit? And someone might say, I've got this friend, Rebecca. She's like wonderful. I know she hasn't been an EA, but gosh, she's just great. And she's really interested. Would you check her out? Sure. And that employer is typically going to be happy to take the referral from their friend and trust their friend that, hey, they've got a good referral named Rebecca who's got these transferable skills. Just give her a shot. They're much more likely to be flexible in their hiring when it's a referral, not when they've just posted the job to the whole world and looking for the unicorn, or they've hired a recruiter to look for the unicorn. Does that make sense? There's a lot of competition there. But if you show up before your resume and your reputation precedes you, they're more likely to give you a shot when otherwise they wouldn't. Does that make sense? That's my big speech.
And so what that referral does, the referral minimizes the risk Shira was talking about, right? So I'm looking for someone, and Shira recommends this person for me to talk to. I know Shira. I know she wouldn't recommend somebody that she thinks highly of, and I know who Shira is and her levels of standards of excellence. Well, if Shira really thinks this person's good, then I really should talk to this person. So that's a powerful way to like Shira said, to help you minimize the risk in this situation.
That makes sense.
And we say risk a lot, and I'm not going to take a lot of time because I know Maria may have a question, but I always use the analogy of like a nightclub or some other club where it's like, they're let's just say there's a bunch of EAs, having a party, and there's a guest list of only EAs that can get in. And then you show up. Somebody's gonna be like, whoa, 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 where are your credentials? You're not an EA, you're from the publishing world. What are you doing here? So you have to become that unicorn. This whole process is about becoming a unicorn, looking like a unicorn, going to the hair salon, getting hair that looks like a unicorn, so that they start recognizing, oh, okay, her resume, we can see some EA-ish type things here, or some unicornish things. And Shira's a coach, I coach, but Shira's a coach. You could talk to a coach. You could also, part of that networking is hop on LinkedIn or anywhere else, find you a couple of EAs and say, hey, I'm looking to make a transition. I see you've been doing this for 15 years.
Right.
You have 5 minutes just to talk. I want to, talk about what that looks like. How should I help me with my resume to shift it, transition, pull out the things from my resume that look EA-ish, which is beyond just you. This is coaching for a lot of candidates who are making shifts. You've got to dress like, look like, smell like, what they're looking for, so they can let you in the club. Otherwise, it's like, wait a minute, wait, hold, what are you doing here? Who let you in? Because if you don't look like that, then you do need that person who's like, oh no, they're with me.
Right. They're with
it.
me.
And when you network and you're talking to, an EA, a long career, what are the key skills that, that EAs really need to be successful? What are the problems that they face? I mean, it's like you're interviewing them to learn as much as you can about the EA position from their perspective. And all of that information is helpful to you, especially if you get to the point of being in the interview. You could use some of that information to create a story that represents you in an interview.
Yeah. So look, if you need support, happy to work with you, right? Like that's helpful to you to actually, recraft your resume, what have you. But just know that that's just an important thing. And are you really looking for an EA job, or is this job just happened to come along? You thought you just pop your hat in the ring?
Well, I originally just thought I would, add that to the list of things I applied for, but I found that when I was talking to other people about it, I was actually kind of excited about it. So.
Interested, yeah. Well, I'll pop. I don't know if you have my information. I'll pop my email in the chat in case you want to have a follow-up conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. Good. All right, Maria, what can we do for you?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I do have a question. I had a couple of questions, in fact. But before I ask the question, I'd just like to speak to you, Rebecca, to say that my experience is I do have a lot of executive assistant experience, and I'm actually looking to pivot out of that. So I'd be happy to chat with you too, because I've got decades of experience as administrative assistant and executive assistant and office management. So I'd be happy to talk with you.
See, power of
share.
networking.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but my question is, I mentioned this to you before, Sharon, that I was with a position I was applying for as an office manager. I didn't know anyone at this union, and so I did the search and found someone that who actually was connected to me through my daughter, who she interviewed him several years ago. She didn't hire him, but she interviewed him, and so I had tried to send him a message to say that I've applied for this position, but when I went to his profile rather than doing it directly, rather than just connecting. When I went to his profile to connect, after I typed my message up, it said I would have to, in order to send a message, I would have to have the premium.
Actually, there's a way around that. There's a way around that.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to explain this for everybody in the call who's watching this video. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Right? So there's basically two ways to reach out to people who are not your first levels. Okay. So second levels and third levels. There are two ways to do it. The first way is what you probably clicked on, what's called the message button. Is that correct? Is that right?
I clicked on the connect button because I didn't have a message option. I thought because he was second level and not first level.
Right. So, okay. So let me ask them. I shouldn't make assumptions here. when you hit the connect button, did it not let you write a note? Is that what happened?
Well, it asked me if I wanted to send a personal note rather than just
Right.
sending a
Right, and you
generic
clicked
note.
on
So I
that.
clicked on, I want to do the personal note, and I typed in my information. And once I finished, the send button was
Okay,
grayed out.
so now I have another question for you. And you may not know this. This is going to sound like an odd question, but I'm asking for a reason. This month, in the last 30 days, have you sent at least 10 connection requests to people?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, then I may not know the answer to your question, because I'll tell you where I'm going with this. LinkedIn recently made a change in the last few months where you can, and I believe this is the number, where you can only send, if you have the free account, you can only send 10 connection requests per month. Now, what I don't know, and maybe
Okay.
you're enlightening me, you're sharing, you're giving me new information here. I know it's 10 connection requests. What I don't know is whether that also includes a personalized message. I don't know, I have to find this out, whether part of that is, hey, to personalize, you have to pay premium. That would be, I can't even, I mean, as it is, we recruiters and coaches are like up in arms about the fact that you can only send two, you can only send 10 connection requests. But if now what you're telling me is that you couldn't even send a personalized message, well, I don't know what to say about that. But what I will say is, had you not done it that way, had you tried to use the message button, which is what's called in-mail, then yeah, you do actually you always have to do premium for that. That's for sure. And
Okay.
therefore I would have said to you, hey, just use the connection button and try to type a personal request, but clearly that didn't work for you. So I don't
Okay.
know if that's the new business model, the freemium thing that LinkedIn's doing,
Okay.
but it could be that you actually have sent 10 connection requests this month and just didn't realize it, in which case, and you're
That's
the
possible.
11th one, and that's why
Right.
maybe that's what's going on.
Okay, because it could be. I don't remember exactly how many I've sent for new connections.
Yeah.
So it's possible I could have done 10, and he
Yeah.
was the 11th one. So, and I'm okay even with, because I thought, well, I could do the free trial, but I'm not at a point where I'm ready to
Really,
take advantage
utilize
of
it.
that.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
do it when I'm ready to do it,
Ready.
rather than
Yeah.
just doing it, then I have
Of
to wait 2
course.
weeks before I can get
Of
back to it.
course. Of course.
Sure. Is the other option if Maria has like a first connection that's connected to this person?
Thank you. Thank you. That's a
Right?
it's a great point.
Yeah.
So Maria, did you mention that this person was a second level to you?
Yes,
Perfect.
connected to
Okay.
my
That
daughter.
means you should be able to see your mutual connection. When I say
It's my
should,
daughter.
oh, it is your daughter. Okay. So in this
Yes.
particular case, you want your daughter to reach out. And that's just the natural relational workaround, is just have your daughter reach out to that person and say, hey, my mom recently applied, blah, blah, blah. Here's her resume and cover letter. I mean, like literally have your daughter email not through
Okay.
LinkedIn, because that person may not be checking LinkedIn. Have her email them. Hey, attach the resume and cover letter. My mom recently applied. Would you consider forwarding this to the hiring manager for extra
Okay.
consideration? That anyway is the most relational thing you can do regardless. If you can ever have a
Okay.
first level contact, champion your candidacy, great. Now it's your daughter, so she's
Daughter.
obviously going to help you, right? If
Right.
it wasn't your daughter, if it was I don't know, somebody you knew from 10 years ago who barely remembers you, you can still do the same thing, but
Right.
they may or may not help you. Your daughter is going to
Right.
help you. So that's the most perfect thing.
Right.
Thank you, Vern. That's the most obvious thing to do, is have her send that note directly to
Do you
the
know
hiring.
do you know the type of relationship your daughter has with this person? Is it a
Good
strong
point.
relationship? And because if
Yes.
it's a
She
strong
was,
relationship, then the likelihood this person's going to respond is pretty good then.
well, no, she didn't know who he was when I mentioned it to her. And so she had to go back and look through her emails and found out that she actually interviewed him for a job and he wasn't
Oh,
hired. She said it's not that he wasn't a good candidate, but he was in law school at the time. So he was about to go to law school, and
okay.
he's an attorney now. But I think the position they were hiring for, they wanted someone who had some more experience with the DC Council, and the person they actually hired had this experience, so they hired that person. But she said it's not that he wasn't a good candidate, but this other person had the experience that they needed.
Presuming she handled herself well with him, which I'm presuming she did,
Oh,
And
yeah.
she should be able to just go back and say, hey, so-and-so, you and I interviewed for the position of X 3 years ago, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
As you know, as it happens, my mom is applying for a job and just wanted to use the power of networking, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure she could do that. I'm sure the relationship was
Yeah.
ended on a good note.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is great. Then it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Mhm. Great. All right. Well,
Okay.
it's about time, but and either one of you have any other follow-on questions?
I was just going to ask whether it's a good idea to put, sort of under that category of showing the skills that you would need for the job you're applying for. Does it, if you're trying to obtain the skills by doing some kind of training or LinkedIn Learning or whatever, does it make sense to put that down somewhere?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Anything that you can show, anytime you can show an employer, I'm committed to leveling up my skills in this profession, particularly if I'm transitioning into this profession. Oh yeah, that shows you're serious. It's to the extent that I've had it happen where I've, because I write resumes and such, right? So I've had it happen where somebody's doing a career shift. Let's say they actually went to the extent of getting a degree in that thing. Okay. But they're a seasoned person. They're not a recent grad, they're not 23. I've actually I've recommended for them that, you know how normal resumes, you've been working for a long time, you stick your education at the bottom of the resume. I've actually had them uplift it to the top, very, very, very top of the resume. Basically, almost like saying neon lights, right? Like to say, hey, just recently got a degree in blah, 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 which is directly related. That's the implication there. So yeah, all the more, if you are going to do LinkedIn Learning, anything like that, you could put that at the top and say, relevant education, currently pursuing blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Yeah. That'll make your branding stand out, because then you don't want them to wait till the end of the resume to see all that. You want it to pop out at the top.
Yeah.
Because a lot of candidates don't know that top of the resume that she's talking about. We
Huge.
pretty much within
2 seconds.
1.5, I was going to say, yeah, half second, 1.5 second, in which we start at the top. We know within like 1 second, 2 seconds, like,
Yep.
okay, this is looking good. This is
Yep.
heading in the direction. Or we're like, this isn't looking.
Yeah.
And then we'll just scan the bottom just to go, let me just make sure I didn't miss out that in her first career, she did this for 10 years. So everything that's relevant should be pushed
At
to
the top.
because again, it's just like standing at that party or that whatever that event, and you're wanting to get in and you don't have your ID, and you're trying to convince them, oh no, I'm great, I'm safe. You need the ID to get them to start going, oh, okay, you're good. So you need to get all the you're good stuff at the top that lets them know, listen, here's my ID. I'm this kind of person. Don't put it at the bottom, because they actually if you got you just finished a degree in something, but the top doesn't look like that at all. The shame is they may never look at the bottom of that second page or the second page at all.
Remember in journalism what they used to say, above the fold?
Yeah.
Above the fold.
Above the fold. We're all old enough to remember walking by the newspaper stand and you look at the window and all you see is above the fold headline, and that is what catches your attention and can make you buy the paper. The same thing with a resume.
Okay. Definitely have to
All the good stuff at the top.
figure it.
Yep. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Well, I do have a question. I know we're over time. Is it okay for me to go ahead and ask?
Yeah, sure.
And mine is really related to what we talked about before, with me pivoting from one career to one industry actually to another, one to get into the nonprofit sector. Although my experience has been in the nonprofit sector, but more as an EA or administrative assistant. And so I was trying to, because I wanted to do the nonprofit sector and working with women who've been abused and that type of thing. I know, sure, you had recommended I move my volunteer information up to the top of my resume. I mean, on my LinkedIn site. And so now I'm wondering, since I am still thinking about the fact that I'm trying to balance both of these at the same time, I've still been applying for positions that aren't necessarily in that space. So I'm wondering how to juggle that, because I think I went in and changed my about to make it more generic, that it includes my administrative experience as well as say what my goals are that I really want to. I even mentioned I want to help. One thing I enjoy doing is just helping organizations be more effective and that type of thing. So I was just wondering if there's a way to appeal to both in my LinkedIn.
You
Is
can,
there?
but you do have to pick a lane. Like you have to really decide where you're
Okay.
focusing your search, because people have to
Yeah.
understand, are you going after an EA job? Oh, and by the way, I'm doing this volunteer stuff. Or are you trying to do both? Can be a little confusing for the employer when they look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's the first thing. So what I would do is, there was one time I remember helping, a couple times where I helped folks who had like their main thing, right? But then, oh, by the way, they had a passion for something. So we wrote the top part of the about section with whatever their normal profession was, and literally drew a line. And said something like my passion project, or I'm passionate about, or my passion for something, and then had like a little paragraph, a little something at the bottom of the about section that spoke to this thing. They liked working with the environment or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and so that might be your place to say my passion for supporting women who are facing domestic abuse, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
It's-
Oh,
and
that is how I
you want to use
redid
all
my about.
caps. You'd want to use all caps for that. Yeah, you don't just write it, draw
Okay.
the line, and in caps, something about my nonprofit passion, or my something like that in caps,
Okay.
and then have a paragraph, just so you're highlighting, you're redirecting them. Okay, there's this personal thing I want to share.
Yeah.
I see. I see.
Chair, would you use potentially long-term goal or something like that, or
That's interesting.
maybe not, now that I'm thinking about
Yeah,
it?
I was thinking it more is probably going to be around the passion part of it, and that's not necessarily the career,
Yeah,
the long-termness of it,
yeah,
but more that
Okay.
it's an also.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I'm
In fact,
seeing
that's I had. I'm
oh,
sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
going to say one thing I'm starting to, well, it's been there. I'm sure people have been doing it for a long time. One thing I'm noticing on a lot of folks is not the about section, but the up top. I don't know what you call that.
The
I
headline,
forget
the
what you call
career
that,
headline,
yeah, underneath your name, and you put
picture.
all these things. A lot of people are putting in there, even though, it's different. LinkedIn is definitely taking on some different color, but a lot of people are now putting, vice president of this, and then all of the business things, but then they put a little quote, or they put a name like, and super passionate about puppies. Now, I don't encourage you to put puppies, but a lot of people are putting that too, passionate, conservationist or something like that,
Yeah.
which shows that other side of you.
Personal. That's a great point, Alki. And all you have to do, Maria, is you use what's called a pipe, or some people call it a pipeline. I don't know if you know where it's, so on your keyboard, it's everybody, it's there, it's just hidden on your keyboard. Look at where the enter button is on your keyboard. The button right above
Okay.
it, if you hit shift and that button, it's what we call the pipe. Okay, it's a vertical line, not the slash, the shift in that button, and then it gives you a straight up and down line. That's a nice way to separate your headline into different sections.
Headline.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of
Okay.
people are doing
I
that.
see.
They're putting their title, their industry, and all those things in there. Recruiter, career coach, and then beside it they put passionate conservationist,
Conservationist,
something like that, and it shows. Oh, they have this other side too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the
Okay, that's very
humanized
helpful.
version of LinkedIn, because people like that. They want to know that you're a person, not just a professional.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. That's been very helpful.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So before we wrap up, on a logistical note, I'm going to keep saying this today and next week. So we're now shifting this call to the first and third Fridays of the month, starting in February. So we'll have our first Friday, February, and then the third Friday, and we're going to go like that. Okay.
Okay.
First and third.
All right.
All right.
Okay. All right, so we'll go
Right.
ahead and wrap up this formal part of the conversation. And for anybody who would like to join me for a short prayer call after this, you're certainly welcome to stay on. And wish everybody
Okay.
a blessed day.
Yep.